All right, I just completed the Pam Wells game jam. It was a lot of fun, a lot of time constraints, and I totally butchered my submission video and explained my rules incorrectly. So I'm just going to do a longer form video here, kind of explaining the rules, how they actually work. So this is Mission Terraform, no relation to this guy right here, of course. Basically, the goal of the game is to terraform 14 tiles by emptying the terraform deck, place all of the habs, the habitation units, which there are 10 of them, and trigger all of the habs on the final roll. So I'll explain that here in a minute. Basically, to start your turn every time, you're going to get orders from Mission Command by rolling a pair of d6. Cool. In this case, we got a 3 and a 3, which simplifies things. So we know that trigger is going to land here no matter what. If you roll a 3 and a 1, for example, that can be interpreted in two different ways. You, of course, get to choose how you want to interpret that, and you don't actually have to lock that in until the end of your turn. So let's just take the turn in order. So first we roll to contact mission control. Next we get to spend energy to build and modify the dice roll. Okay, so first off, you should start with all of your energy. So there you go, you have 10 energy total, and that does not replenish unless you make it replenish. So we're going to start by doing just that. We're going to spend 2 to construct an energy pylon. Here we go. And these will produce 1 energy whenever they are triggered. So I'm going to put that right here because, per this arrow, this tile is going to be triggered at the end of this turn. So next, we still have 8 energy to work with, and that's a lot of energy just to like leave sitting. So I think I'm going to spend 2 more, and we'll go ahead and place an additional pylon. Now, you can't have 2 structures on the same tile except for connectors. We'll get there in a minute. So we're just putting those on 2 separate ones. So we still have plenty of energy here. Why don't we get into what the connectors do? So connectors, you can pay 3 to connect any 2 tiles. And this is a bi-directional connection. So here, this now is the same as having an arrow pointing both this way and this way. So if a trigger starts on this tile, it'll cascade to this tile. If a trigger starts on this tile, it'll cascade to this tile. And what that means, just with the way these arrows happen to be, is that since we're triggering this tile here this turn, that trigger passes here, passes here, passes here, passes here. Tiles can only be triggered once per turn, so that doesn't get like a recursive loop or anything. And it cascades all the way down here. As long as you see arrows pointing, the trigger continues to cascade. So we still have 3 energy left. Since we did spend 3 energy to construct that connector, I'm going to go ahead and spend 2 more energy to construct an additional pylon. We'll put that there. And then let's go ahead and end phase 2 of our turn by starting phase 3. So on phase 3, we're going to place a hab to end your turn. And when you place a hab, you do gain an energy. So for now, I'm just going to place this right here. And we're going to gain that energy for placing the hab. Okay, so stage 4, the biggest part of the turn, we're going to resolve our triggers. So I set these dice here just so we'd remember it's a 3-3, and we're going to trigger this tile. So first phase of triggers is always energy. So this tile triggers, so we gain 1, arrow here, gain 2, connector here, gain 3. So we'll gain 3 energy for our pylons this turn, 2 and 3. Cool. Next, we will go ahead and trigger the gear. So this just means we're going to be able to rotate a tile at the end of the turn. If the tile that this was triggered, if the tile that this was on gets triggered, you get the gear, and that happens very, very last. Next thing we would resolve is bombs, but we haven't placed any terraforming bombs this turn, so we're not going to do that. And I believe that ends our triggers. So we can now resolve this gear. The gear lets you rotate any one tile any number of times. So we're going to look here for something that would be opportune for us. And I'm seeing this tile here that's kind of in our network that we're building. And if we rotate it this way, anytime this tile gets triggered, it'll now trigger this one, which goes in 4 directions, obviously. And if we trigger somewhere down here, like this tile, hopefully we can cascade that trigger back up to kind of the network we're building. Cool. So since we used the gear, we roll again to place the gear. And we got a 6-2, so we'll put that right over there. And of course, you can choose which 6-2 you want that to be, either 6-2 or 2-6. Okay, so that ends turn number 1, as we can see here. So we're going to start turn number 2. Step 1, roll the dice to contact mission control. We got a 3 and a 3 again. That's kind of crazy, but we're going to roll with it. So we know our trigger is going to be there. That makes things pretty easy for us. We gained quite a bit of energy last time, so we should be able to just keep expanding. I'm noticing this tile can't have habitation zones built on it, and this tile can't have energy pylons built on it. So let's go ahead and spin 2 to put an energy pylon where we know we're not going to build a hab anyway. That seems like a good move to me. And then maybe we can expand our network. Let's pay 3 to build another connector here. And I'm going to put that connector, how about I put it right here? Well, that's not a very good one, huh? Here's a good idea. I'll put it right here. Now, this tile was already triggering this way, but our network's kind of down in this area. So if we want our trigger to go up into this 4-directional tile, which those are kind of rare, I think there's only 3 in the whole deck, and we got lucky and have all 3 in our starting grid here. So now, anytime our network gets triggered, that trigger is going to pass along here, and it's going to trigger all of these tiles. We probably should be terraforming by now. We do have to get all 14 terraforms done by the end of the 10th turn, but we're investing. We're getting some more energy infrastructure built. So we're going to do phase 3, ending our building phase, and let's put this right here where we can't construct energy pylons. So no reason not to use that square. Cool. Now we can start resolving. Oh, and we gain an energy whenever we place a hab. Boom. Now we can start resolving our triggers. We'll start with green. So triggers here, this triggers this tile, triggers here, this triggers this tile. Oh, and I think I messed up because I'm pretty sure this tile isn't actually getting triggered by anything. Let's check. So trigger, 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 trigger. Ah, okay, it is getting triggered. Perfect. So we get all 4 energy there for our triggers. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Great. Looks like we're gonna have 5 energy for our next turn. And then again, this is where we would do bombs. We didn't do any. So let's do a final turn here for this demonstration. A 4 and a 2. Okay, so we can either put that here, and I'm just going to go with that because we lucked out and put our connector there last time. So expanding your network increases the odds that any mission is going to be somewhere already in your network. So the astronauts don't have to trek through rugged terrain. They're already ready to work on the infrastructure you started building. Great, so we know that's where our trigger is going to be. We have 5 energy. I think it's time to start blowing stuff up. So each bomb only costs 1 energy, so we're going to pay 1. And I'm going to put this bomb somewhere I know it's going to trigger, and I'm going to put it on kind of a useless tile. Hopefully, in this terraforming deck, we have some tiles with more arrows and things that are going to help us out, so I'm going to destroy some blank ones. Let's find some other blank ones here in the network. This one should be a good spot. We'll spend 1 for that. It looks like if we follow this down here, this tile is also going to trigger. And we'll spend 1 for that. And then we'll spend 2 more. Let's place 2 more bombs here. I see an easy one here. And then let's blow this one up, and we'll hope for a better one in the future. So, final stage of the turn, our building phase at least, we get to place our habitation unit. I think this is going to end up being a pretty pivotal tile on our network, so I'm pretty sure we'll be able to trigger that at the end. So I'm going to go there for our hab. Now, whenever we place a hab, we do get an energy. Okay, and you'll notice a special symbol here. At the end of turn 3, and turn 6 and turn 9, you reveal a new constraint. So this constraint is called zoning. New habs can't be adjacent to existing habs. So going forward, we can't have habs next to each other like this. We have to give them more space. So that just makes it a little bit harder as the game goes on. And like I said, you'll end up with 3 of these at the end of the game. There are 9 total to give some variety. And you don't know what you're going to get, so you have to keep plans open, not tunnel on one strategy. Let's see. Let's go ahead and resolve this turn. So we trigger here. Let's get our energy, 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 energy. And that trigger also comes down this way, which takes us to this tile. So all 4 of our pylons trigger, so we get 4 energy. Cool. Next, let's do our bombs. So we trigger here. No, wait. We trigger here, which triggers here, which triggers here, which triggers this tile. So that one's triggered. And I'm pretty sure we pathed out all of those other ones. So we know all 4 of these bombs are going to trigger. Oh, all 5 of these bombs are going to trigger. We're blowing up this planet. So when you resolve those, you just remove these tiles like so. Cool. And then we get to place 5 new tiles from the terraforming deck. So we're just going to do them one at a time. This is how you have to do them. You reveal a tile. This one happens to be blank. I'm going to put that in a useless spot. And the reason for that is that you kind of want to hold out on placing a tile in a more pivotal location like here in hopes that you get a good one. Of course, holding out could mean that you get stuck with a really bad one, though. Let's turn this guy this way so we can maybe get some triggers going over here in the future. We'll see. Okay. And just keep doing this until you fill in all of the empty tiles. We got one left here. Okay. This tile requires 3 bombs to be destroyed, so we're probably not going to end up terraforming that one. Okay. Then used up bombs get returned to the supply, and you keep going like that. The only special rule is going forward is that at the end of your 10th turn, you place this hab as normal, get your energy, all that, but then there is an 11th roll for mission command. So on that roll for mission command, you have to make sure that this triggers everything in your network. So in this case, this was a 3-1. Obviously, that's not connected to my network at all. So I would want to have some energy saved up so I could manipulate that dice roll and make sure that it lands in my network. So you kind of like need a buffer or a safety net to make sure that you can actually trigger the final mission, get all of the colonizers into their residence on the new planet. And yeah, that's Mission Terraform. Thanks. All right, just wanted to jump in here at the end to give some thoughts on the jam itself. First off, Pam is awesome. That was organized really well. Everything went off pretty much flawlessly without any major technical issues or anything like that. I think it was like $25 or something like that to get the actual box of components from the Game Crafter, which all the participants had to do a few months ago, just to make sure everyone actually gets the components in time. Obviously, if you're super concerned with cheating, I think it was technically possible to view the components you were getting on the page before actually receiving anything. I don't think anybody probably did that, and I don't know that really cheating is that big of a deal, even if you had, just as far as making it like a super competitive thing. I don't know. So I come from a video game jam background, and I've done probably a couple dozen video game jams. Very different just because of how much faster board games are to prototype than video games. You want to change something in your video game, you're changing the code, switching assets around. It's a lot of like technical work. In the board game, you cross out what you had and you write new rules, and there you go. You can test the new stuff. So iterating was really fast for me. I probably finished the core concept of the game in the first 3 hours or so of the jam, and then just over the course of doing a few playtests was able to refine it kind of. I don't know that I love the final product I ended up with, but it's definitely playable, and I actually enjoyed myself doing some of the tests, which is rare for me. You know, during any of my prototypes, it's like, oh, I'm actually having fun, kind of crazy. So for this jam, there was no theme, there was no restrictions, no like mandatory inclusions for mechanics or anything like that. The only constraints on the jam were the components themselves. So it was a box of components you kind of saw in the video. There were 10 various bits and bobs, and then 50 cards, and then a singular gear. I think it's an interesting way to do a jam instead of doing a theme, having everything be components driven like that. It definitely gets your brain thinking in a different way. One thing I'm worried about, having not actually seen the other submissions, is that there might be a lot of similarity between submissions. I saw some pictures of other people's games, and it looked like they were kind of doing a very similar thing, a modular board with the cards, connecting them with the longer pieces. So that might just be kind of an obvious place that the brain goes in doing that. I don't know if that's really a bug or a feature. You can kind of really see the differences in the way people think. That might be interesting depending on what you want out of a jam. I think just because of how easy it is to prototype and change rules and come up with things, and since we had 24 hours, I might want to see more restrictions. Maybe, I don't know, like in the form of a theme or a required command mechanic or a banned mechanic. Maybe banning mechanics would be the most interesting way to do it. Not sure. The submission required a 2-minute long explainer video kind of going through a turn and like a very broad overview of the rules. As your final submission. That's the way that the game gets judged and everything like that. I think I don't like that. For one, it's really hard to explain the rules of even a very simple game in 2 minutes, much less like give an introduction to it. Here's the name, here's the theme, things like that.
Thing number two is it's a very different technical task that requires like a lot of like a technical work in the same way that a video game does to do right at the end. So I was kind of scrambling to record a video and make sure I had it uploaded and things like that. And I'd originally planned to like edit it with cuts and do all the lines until they were perfect and things like that. And there was simply not enough time. So doing a video based submission kind of turns it into a video about a board game jam rather than just a board game jam. I don't know how that could be solved other than by doing it in person, which is the last thing I wanted to talk about. Doing it in different locations, I think, is less fun. The camaraderie of it all is sort of like the point. And then I would really like to finish off a jam like this by playing other submissions and getting feedback on my design and, being able to see it through someone else's eyes. Having the end of it just be submitting a video is a little bit like, meh. I don't know. It's anticlimactic, I guess. I don't know how else you would do it in the format of a YouTube channel. I think that format makes a ton of sense and is perfectly valid in that context. But if I were to set up an in-person jam, I think I would want the ending of the jam to be in some form or other, everyone playing other people's games, and maybe even like requiring a detailed feedback card. In online game jams, one way that platforms incentivize you to actually play other games is your game will get served to people algorithmically more often the more you comment on and review other submissions. So if you go through and you review a bunch of submissions, your game gets pushed to more people, so more people look at it and review it. So it's kind of a virtuous cycle there. That might be something to think about. Overall, it was a ton of fun. I'm very glad I did it. I would definitely do it again. And I don't know if I'll take this prototype anywhere because it is a solo game. I don't know that I'm really interested in developing it. I don't really play a lot of solo board games. I might want to digitize it and turn it into a video game, though. I don't know. Could be fun. Either way, it was great. I feel like it got me out of like a little creative rut, and it was a lot of fun. So would recommend.